Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Israel attacks Iran's Fordow nuclear site and Tehran's Evin prison as US President Donald Trump floats the idea of regime change after the US strikes in Iran. Exiled Crown Prince and eldest son of Iran's Shah Reza Pahlavi calls regime change the only ultimate solution, offers to lead the transition. Aggression against Iran was groundless, says Russian President Vladimir Putin as he hosts Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Moscow. And it's 40 years since Air India's Kanishka was bombed by terrorists over the Atlantic off the Irish coast in 1985, killing all 329 on board. The conflict between Iran and Israel escalated further, with both countries continuing their missile strikes. The Israeli Defense Forces said to have launched a series of strikes on Iranian airports and military targets. The IDF struck 6 regime airports across western, central and eastern Iran, destroying runways, underground hangars, refueling aircraft F-14, F-5 and AH-1. Israel claimed that these aircraft were meant to intercept Israeli jets, adding that the defense forces impaired their takeoff capabilities from these airports, as well as Iranian military's ability to operate its air force from them. Further, the Israeli military spokesman, Brigadier General Efi Defrin, has confirmed that its military has attacked the sites of Iran's Revolutionary Guards in Tehran. The latest operation by Israel is aimed at damaging and denying the Iranian regime's ability to launch and produce missiles.
At this time, we continue to damage and deny the Iranian regime's ability to launch and produce missiles. At this moment, the Air Force planes are deepening the strikes in the Tehran area with an emphasis on commanding headquarters of the Revolutionary Guards.
The Israeli military also confirmed it struck roads around Iran's Fordow enrichment facility to obstruct access to the site. The underground site was one of those hit in Sunday's attack by the United States on 3 nuclear facilities. The IAEA chief has said that there is every possibility of very significant damage at Iran's Fordow site.
At this time, no one, including the IAEA, is in a position to have fully assessed the underground damage at Fordow. Given the explosive payload utilized and the extreme vibration-sensitive nature of centrifuges, very significant damage is expected to have occurred.
Earlier, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the country was even closer to its objectives in Iran after the US airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities ordered by President Donald Trump. At a press conference, he reiterated that Israel's goal remains the dismantling of Iran's nuclear and missile capabilities.
There is no doubt that this is a regime that wants to eliminate us, to erase our existence. That is why we launched this operation, to remove the 2 existential threats, nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. We are progressing step by step toward achieving these goals, and we are very, very close to completing them.
Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Moscow on Monday. At the start of their talks at Kremlin, Putin condemned the recent aggression against Iran as groundless and reaffirmed Russia's readiness to support the Iranian people. Putin called the aggression against Iran baseless and reaffirmed Moscow's support, while Kremlin condemned the US strikes with deep regret.
Our position regarding the ongoing events is well known. It's been clearly stated and articulated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on behalf of Russia and reflects the stance we have taken in the United Nations Security Council. This absolutely unprovoked aggression against Iran has no basis whatsoever and no justification whatsoever. For our part, we are making efforts to assist the Iranian people.
Arakchi thanked President Putin for condemning the US strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, calling Russia on the right side of history.
This is an act of aggression and an attack that must be unequivocally condemned. We appreciate Russia's stance in condemning this assault in the strongest possible terms today, and we hope it will be accompanied by practical support in the Security Council.
Meanwhile, Iran has vowed to defend itself after the United States joined Israel in its military action against the country. Iran threatened US bases in West Asia after massive airstrikes that Washington said had destroyed Tehran's nuclear program. In a televised address, an advisor to Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said that any country in the region or elsewhere that is used by American forces to strike Iran will be considered a legitimate target for Iranian armed forces. Now, in an interesting development, the exiled Crown Prince, an eldest son of Iran's Shah, Reza Pahlavi, has called regime change in Iran the only ultimate solution. He even offered to lead the transition.
Regime is ultimately what people fear the most. They want to make sure that at the tail end of all this regime actually collapses, which is what I mean by saying don't throw it another lifetime. This regime is on its way down. People know it. And the biggest fear is, what if this regime was to survive? That's why I keep saying this regime must go. The only solution for Iran's liberation and for peace is for this regime to be no longer there. This is an opportunity in front of us. So we are doing what we can as Iranians fighting this brutal regime. It is time for the international community to finally decide whether this time they're going to be with the people and help them overthrow this regime.
US President Donald Trump has urged Iran to end the conflict after he launched surprise strikes on their nuclear infrastructure. The president said that they had a spectacular military success on Sunday, taking the bomb right out of Iran's hands. Trump, in a social media post, said, and I quote him, "Monumental damage was done to all nuclear sites in Iran, as shown by satellite images. Obliteration is an accurate term. The white structure shown is deeply embedded into the rock, with even its roof well below ground level and completely shielded from flame. The biggest damage took place far below the ground level. Bullseye," Trump wrote. Further, Trump even hinted at the possibility of regime change in Iran. In a social media post, Trump said it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be regime change? Further, NATO chief Mark Rutte on Monday emphasized that Iran must be prevented from developing a nuclear weapon. Ahead of a NATO summit, Rutte said that when it comes to NATO's stance on Iran's nuclear program, allies have long agreed that Iran must not develop a nuclear weapon. He also dismissed suggestions that the war in the Middle East would deflect attention from the summit of the 32 NATO leaders starting on Tuesday. While addressing the press, NATO chief also said that the US strikes on Iran did not violate international law. Earlier, the United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session on Sunday after the US launched airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, sparking alarm across the international community. World leaders have issued urgent calls for restraint and a return to diplomacy. Tensions continue to mount in West Asia as the fallout from the strikes unfolds. Diptanshu Kashyap has more.
The bombing of Iranian nuclear facilities by the United States marks a perilous turn in a region that is already reeling. From the outset of the crisis, I have repeatedly condemned any military escalation in the Middle East. The people of the region cannot endure another cycle of destruction. And yet, we now risk descending into a rat hole of retaliation after retaliation. To avoid it, diplomacy must prevail.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warning of a perilous turn in West Asia after US strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. Speaking at an emergency session, he urged restraint. Iran called the US strikes illegal and accused Washington of turning the Non-Proliferation Treaty into a political weapon. US on its part defended the strikes, saying Iran had blocked diplomacy while advancing its nuclear program. Reactions from world leaders were mixed but unified in urging calm. Japan called for de-escalation, underlining the need for renewed diplomatic efforts. Australia backed the US strikes but also stressed the importance of dialogue. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer echoed calls to stabilize the region and bring all parties back to the negotiating table.
Well, we've long had concerns about the Iranian nuclear programme and been very clear that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. The US has now taken action to alleviate that threat. It is important that we now de-escalate the situation, stabilise the region, and get the parties back around the table to negotiate.
We don't want escalation and a full-scale war. We continue to call for dialogue and for diplomacy. As I've said for many days now, we are deeply concerned about any escalation in the region, and we want to see diplomacy, dialogue and de-escalation.
Asian economies remain cautious, with energy and economic priorities weighing heavily. The Strait of Hormuz, a vital artery for global oil shipments, remains a flashpoint. Any disruption here could trigger a domino effect across global supply chains and markets. Diptanshu Kashyap's report for DD India.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Monday met with Britain's King Charles and had lunch at the Windsor Castle. The visit comes ahead of a NATO summit. Zelensky last met King Charles III in March this year. The king has previously voiced his support for Ukrainians who are facing Russia's unprovoked aggression. During his current visit, Zelensky is also scheduled to hold talks with Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the speakers of both parliamentary chambers. You're watching DD India Live, still to come on the show. India continues to evacuate its nationals from Iran and Israel under Operation Sindhu. India has weeks of oil supply. Imports continue via many routes, says Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister Hardeep Singh Puri. And our spotlight on the forgotten martyr of India's emergency era, actress turned activist, Snehalata Reddy.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I am Tanvi Taneja. India continues to evacuate its nationals from Iran and Israel under Operation Sindhu. 285 Indians have returned from Mashhad late Sunday night, with the total evacuees from Iran now at 1,713. 162 more are being brought back from Israel. Minister Pabitra Margarita welcomed the returnees who hailed the government's efforts, chanting Hindustan Zindabad. DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya reports.
Operation Sindhu continues to bring Indians home from conflict zones. 285 Indian nationals arrived safely in New Delhi from Mashhad on Mahan Air Flight W571, taking the total number of evacuees from Iran to 1,713. Minister of State for External Affairs Pabitra Margarita was present at the airport to receive the returnees. Overwhelmed with emotion, the returnees chanted Hindustan Zindabad and lauded the Indian government's swift and decisive efforts.
with the help of the Indian Embassy, we've managed to come here. Thank you to the Indian government. Thank you to all of the officials in Iran who helped us out through the entire journey.
It was tremendous job done by the Embassy of India in Tehran, especially not only the ambassador, including the whole staff. 24 hours they were at the back of us, they were helping us in all respect of life. The situation was very tense, but with the support of the embassy, we are very confident and we have come back safely. Thank you for the Indian government, especially the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
We are very happy. There is the airspace is closed, Iran and Iraq, but only flights for Indians is flying from Mashhad to New Delhi. It's all because of Modi's diplomacy, and we really thank our Honorable Prime Minister and all the staff of the embassy in Iran for all their efforts, and we sincerely thank. Jai Bharat, Jai Hind.
Meanwhile, 162 Indians are also being brought back from Israel as tensions in the region rise amid the Iran-Israel conflict.
We are in constant contact with all our Indian nationals residing there in Iran and Israel also. So I'm very glad to say that from Israel also 162 Indian nationals have already crossed border to Amman of Jordan, and within a day or two those Indian nationals will also be brought safely to India.
Once again, India's diplomacy proves no matter where, no Indian will be left behind. Tapas Bhattacharya's report for DD India.
In another gesture of regional solidarity, India has offered limited seats on flights from Amman to New Delhi for Sri Lankans wishing to return home from Israel. The Sri Lankan embassy in Israel announced free transportation from Tel Aviv to Amman and onward flight to Delhi will be provided. However, travellers must arrange their own tickets from New Delhi to Colombo. Registration is open at the Sri Lankan embassy in Israel on 23rd and 24th of June. The concerned embassies will coordinate the logistics. Meanwhile, Sri Lankan ambassador in Israel, Nimal Bandara, has requested the Sri Lankan expatriates to be vigilant and follow safety instructions issued by the Israeli government following missile attacks by Iran in the northern and central parts of Israel last morning. Bandara said more attacks were expected from Iran following the involvement of US forces with the Israeli forces. Previously, India had extended similar support to Sri Lankans stranded in Iran under Operation Sindhu alongside citizens of Nepal. These actions reaffirm India's commitment to regional cooperation and humanitarian assistance in times of crises. India, the world's third largest oil importer and fourth biggest gas buyer, has weeks of energy supplies and continues to receive supplies from several routes amid escalating tensions in the globe's biggest energy supply regions. Union Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas Hardeep Singh Puri said that India is closely monitoring the evolving geopolitical situation in West Asia and has no reason to worry, as under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, the government has already diversified supplies in the past few years.
We had diversified the sources of supply, and out of the 5.5 million barrels of crude oil that India consumes daily, about 1.5 and 2 million only come through the Straits of Hormuz. We import roughly 4 million barrels through other routes, and our companies, the oil marketing companies, have enough stocks. Most of them have stocks up to 3 weeks. One of them has in fact 25 days stocks. And we are also confident that we can increase the supply of crude through other routes should the situation so warrant. We are in touch with all possible actors in this, the supply routes, etc. And I believe that there is no cause for any alarm on this score.
23rd June 2025 marks 40 years since one of the deadliest aviation terror attacks in history, the bombing of Air India Flight 182 Kanishka. The tragedy, carried out by terrorists in 1985, claimed 329 innocent lives, most of them Canadians of Indian origin. On this solemn day, a major tribute took place in Cork Island, where the ill-fated flight went down. Led by Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri, as India steps up efforts to ensure justice even 4 decades later.
23rd June 1985. Air India Flight 182 en route from Montreal to Delhi via London exploded mid-air off the coast of Ireland after a bomb was planted by Khalistani terrorists. It was not just an attack on a plane, it was an assault on humanity. Today, India's Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri, along with Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin and Canada's Minister of Diversity and Inclusion Kamal Khera, Anand Sangri, paid floral tributes to the victims.
The destruction of Air India Flight 182 Emperor Kanishka by an act of terrorism is a stain on humanity. As a representative of the Government of India, I once again extend my heartfelt condolences to the bereaved families and the people of the countries from which the passengers were drawn, Canada, India and Britain.
India, under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has intensified diplomatic and intelligence efforts against pro-Khalistan elements, particularly those operating from Canada, the UK and many other Western countries. Recently, India has handed over a detailed dossier to partner countries and sought stronger cooperation on the extradition and prosecution of those involved in separatist and extremist activities.
I lost my entire family in the Air India Kanishka bombing 40 years ago. For me, it's very significant that the Prime Minister has sent a delegation of senior cabinet ministers led by Shri Hardeep Singh Puri ji and MPs and MLAs.
The terror attack by the so-called Khalistani groups not only killed 329 innocent people on board of the plane, but also devastated thousands of families. Today, while the family members of the victims of the ill-fated Kanishka 182 remember their loved ones, they also thank the Indian government for keeping the fight up against terrorism of all forms.
I can only see in the last few years significant steps have been taken vis-a-vis our friendly neighbors, our other countries, to stop the scourge of Khalistani terrorism. In that sense, I think this government has taken some very positive steps.
While the wounds of Kanishka may never fully heal, today's ceremony in Cork marked a turning point, one of renewed resolve, not in just remembrance, but also in justice. A tragic chapter in history and yet a reminder that justice delayed must not be justice denied. On this 40th anniversary, the Indian government has sent a strong message. Terror has no place in a civilized world, and those who lost their lives on Kanishka 182 will never be forgotten, and the menace of terrorism will be uprooted forever. From Delhi, Akshay Dongre for DD India.
As the state of emergency, which is considered to be a blot on India's democratic history, completes 50 years, the Bharatiya Janata Party, which played a major role in opposing the act of the then Congress-led government, has been revisiting the dark days when its leaders, along with eminent citizens, were dumped in jails. One such story is of Snehalata Reddy. She was a film star, an activist and a voice of resistance. But during the emergency in 1975, Snehalata Reddy's courage became her only crime. Arrested, silenced and broken behind bars, her story is one of dignity crushed by dictatorship. Here is a haunting story of a woman who stood tall and paid the ultimate price for dissent.
Who is this woman? Many of us may find it hard to recognize her. She is Snehalata Reddy, a celebrated actress of South Indian cinema from a bygone era. But that is only part of her identity. In 1975, then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi declared a state of emergency. Snehalata Reddy took to the streets in protest against the authoritarian regime. She participated in peaceful demonstrations. What made her an even bigger target for the government was a close association with the socialist leader George Fernandes. At the time, George Fernandes had gone underground, and authorities suspected that Snehalata knew his whereabouts. What followed was a tragedy that remains a chilling reminder of those dark times. On May 2, 1976, Snehalata Reddy was arrested under the draconian Maintenance of Internal Security Act, MISA. a law used extensively during the emergency to silence political dissent. She was confined to a small cell in Bengaluru jail, barely fit for human habitation. Veteran journalist Kuldeep Nair recounted her condition in his book Emergency Retold. In the prison cell, there was only a hole in the corner for a toilet and a barred iron door at the other end. This renowned Kannada actress was forced to sleep on the floor. For 8 long months, Snehalata Reddy endured constant torture. While in prison, Snehalata kept a diary, which was later published in 1977 by the Karnataka Human Rights Committee under the title A Prison Diary. In it, she described the inhumane treatment she endured.
As soon as a woman enters, she is stripped naked in front of everyone. When someone is sentenced, punishment follows. But does a human body deserve to be humiliated like this? Who is responsible for these dehumanizing methods?
During the emergency, many opposition leaders were jailed. Among them were Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Lal Krishna Advani, who were also imprisoned in Bengaluru jail. Snehalata Reddy's dark, isolated cell was right next to theirs. Both Vajpayee and Advani later recalled hearing the haunting cries of a woman from a nearby cell. It was only later they discovered that the screams came from the actress Snehalata Reddy. Despite her deteriorating health, Snehalata suffered from asthma. She was denied medical treatment and subjected to even harsher conditions. After 8 months in custody, the government finally released her on parole on January 15, 1977. But just 5 days later, Snehalata Reddy died of a heart attack. The charge against her: she was accused of plotting to detonate dynamite at Parliament and other key buildings in Delhi, an allegation that was never proven in court. Falsely accused, tortured, and ultimately pushed to her death, Snehalata Reddy became one of many silenced voices of the emergency. Bureau Report, DD India.
That's all for this edition of DD India Live. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on our different social media handles at DD India Live, and you can also download our DD India mobile app for quick news and updates on the go. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.